What happens when culture becomes the loudest preacher in society? From Elvis to Drake, music has carried powerful messages that shape how generations think about identity, morality, and even truth itself. Has hip-hop now become one of the leading factors steering our culture away from God's vision?
UPD starts now.
Hey friends, thank you for joining us today. We are Untrained Philosophical Discussionists. My name's Johnny Hansen. Right there's my good buddy, Andy Lamb. And today we're opening a series where we're going to talk about culture and music's influence on culture. And we're going to talk about how through the generations, starting at the 1950s and working our way to present time, how music has went about shaping the culture and become maybe one of the prominent factors that's really leading us on how we see the world, how we approach things in our life, and how that influence is trending us away from biblical principles.
Yeah, unfortunately, we'll be hyper focused on the music aspect of it, but we can just see it across TV shows and the way that movies are set up and how I think there's just been these little steps over time. Feels like this game plan that was set in motion and just...
It feels intentional.
It does. We're going to slowly degrade this over time. So what we're going to do, we're going to normalize hedonism and secularism.
Yes.
But there's a long game that's being advanced here. And so we kind of want to go through how it started. I think history, I think, is one of the most important things we need to look at. We need to know where we were so we know where we're going. And, we were talking about the 1950s seems to be kind of the peak.
That post-World War II, the men have come home now from this battle. The women are there. These families are starting to produce babies.
Yes.
And what's going on in the household. And I was looking up some stats, and the lowest number I could find is that 50% of all people at this time, the 1950s, were attending church once a week.
Yeah.
And as high as in 57, 63% of people reported being in church weekly.
Yeah.
And from 1960 on, that was the peak. That's the peak in this country. Mm-hmm. And since then, it's only went down. And in fact, the most recent numbers I could find is about 21% of people say they go to church weekly. So 1 in 5 people when it was 3 out of 10.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry, 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5 is what it used to be. It's interesting that part of that, as I was reading some of this, economic prosperity and social conformity were also a part of church. So culturally,
that's a great point.
I think within communities, if you were a business person in the community, you went to church. Business was done in the church. So people would see you if you were a banker, if you were an attorney. If you wanted, it was a business networking of people. So I still wonder how much of the people that were going to church was it they were there really to focus on Christ, or whether it was, hey, this is the cultural norm. If you live in this community, you're just going to be going to church. But
that's a great point.
But nonetheless, I still feel that the pulse of the country at that point in time was still focused around morality. Now, whether you want to say morality or is a church thing, I would argue yes. I mean, where do we get morality from? We get the standards. You shall not murder. I think that's a cultural thing that everybody would agree you shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. And so we can find things like that even within the Bible. So I think the Bible sets a tone for what morality should look like.
I think it's good for you to make that point too about how, if people are not in the church for the right reasons, that hypocrisy will, it'll be noticed.
Yeah.
And then it won't be respected, and people will find truth somewhere else. So if it was just a meeting ground for business guys and people weren't actually there, learning the word of God and expressing it and starting to show the fruits of the Spirit, then it's going to look like nonsense to the kids. And I think that's a big, important piece as we move into the 50s. We're going to see how people are looking for other things to kind of fill that void, in society. And I wanted to read this piece of scripture because we've read it other times here. Yeah. I just think it's so applicable to this episode. 2 Timothy 4, 3 and 4.
Oh, yeah.
For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their desires, they will gather around them great numbers of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths or mysticisms. Yo.
That was written almost 2,000 years ago, and the applicable nature of that verse today.
Especially as we start unpacking some of these things that you'll see through the decades of music and the way that what is music directed towards? It's directed towards the youth. And each decade we see it degrading the cultural norms of the time we're speaking of as you move forward into this, I would say worse off society.
I agree. I would just to kind of walk through this a little bit more. There's a study that was done in the 90s in Ohio, and it showed the actual attendance range for people in church from 36% down to 20%. The reason for that is when people were polled, they stated they went to church based off of social desirability, though they didn't actually attend. So they felt like it was just the right thing that I should tell people. They almost felt like they were guilty to say they didn't go to church.
Yeah.
And so that's why when I look at these numbers from the 50s.
So the right motives matter.
The right motives do matter. Why are you at church? Now, you could still be at church and not want to be there, and I still think you could hear some things from the pastor that make you go, okay, well, maybe this is how I should live my life. I think being around people that are filled with the Holy Spirit is a thing that can change your life over time, but there's still always this question of, why are people there?
Yeah.
The point that I want to address here, too, that I think is so important that you said there, we see that what is the standard that's being set up for our kids? So these people in the 50s are all dragging their kids to church going, this is what we do. And then one decade later in the 60s and 70s, there's this steep decline in church attendance.
Right.
And so to kind of tie that into we're going to look at music today. So we're going to talk through what was happening at those points in time.
I'm going to go through kind of this list that I put together. So in the 1950s, you have Elvis, who's maybe the biggest musician on the planet at the time.
Maybe even of all time.
Maybe of all time. But with him, you have guys like Chuck Berry, you have Little Richard, and these guys this is some of that early sexual revolution stuff. This is what spills into the 60s and really becomes the sexual revolution. And some of this, you see these crowds of women going to these concerts, and they're fainting, they're losing their bloody minds, watching this guy shake his hips on the stage. And these guys are all doing that similarly. Little Richard and Chuck Berry are doing the same thing, too. Yeah. It was very sensual, the way that they performed. And it draw these young ladies in. And, around this time, we're starting to get some of like birth control pills and stuff like that. So you see some of these things starting to come into play in society. And so sexual behavior starts becoming a little more prevalent. Now in the 60s, just following right on the edge of this, you got the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, you got Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, you got the Doors. And what they bring in is like a counterculturalism. Instead of having short buzz cuts, men are starting to grow their hair out, and they're wearing more revealing clothing. So there's this sexualization at that point in time too, and you see drugs coming into play. Obviously, Hendrix died of drugs, Joplin died of drugs, Jim Morrison died of drugs. You also see mysticism. So you hear that
big psychedelic movement going on at the same time as well.
That's part of the drugs. And you see mysticism and the free love movement and all this stuff starts coming into play where these cultural norms of the 50s are out the door.
Well, we're also in the Vietnam era now. So you have these guys coming home from Vietnam. And so we have anti-war protests and civil rights activists happening all at the same time. So there's a big disturbance in just the culture of the country as a whole that is going on here. And so where people are being filled in at this point in time is the church has kind of been set aside as the voice of reason.
Well, it's where all the hypocrites go.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to experience some other sort of, and that's where mysticism comes in. It's like I'm trying to experience something, some sort of spiritual thing, but I don't want the spirituality my parents had because that was phony baloney. I want something that's like for me.
Yeah.
My itchy little ears need to be filled.
Right.
The third thing, in the 70s, we were looking at Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, the Sex Pistols, when you get into some of the punk rock. And what you start seeing with Black Sabbath, and you start seeing some of these occult themes, occultisms, Ozzy's biting the head off apparently it was accidental, but he did it anyways. He bit the head off a bat.
Yeah.
And in so doing, a lot of people started tying like witchcraft and stuff to that. Like, oh, he must be into the dark arts.
Bro,
and he leaned into that.
I went to a Christian school, and I remember when that stuff happened. And I don't remember when that happened, but I remember the Christian school talking about how demonic, Ozzy Osbourne is because he did this. I mean, that was from the Christian side of things. They're looking at all this. And it's just such a hard stance of, you can't even listen to that music at all, because the moment you listen to that music, you're going to become like them. And so there was just this separation that also happened. There was no freedom to be able to listen to music like that, because you would become that all of a sudden.
Well, and then from the free love movement, you start getting into like hedonism. So it's not enough anymore just to be able to have sex with one girl. Now you want to have like these wild orgies and stuff like that, and they're drug fueled, and you're getting into these places. You start seeing some of these clubs popping up where like everybody's going, and they're it's all this stuff is kind of melting into the occultism, the hedonism, and then that always leads to nihilism. Like life doesn't matter. There's nothing beyond this thing. What's the whole point of anything? You see the 80s come in, and this is kind of right as we start seeing like hip hop come into play. So you see like in the pop culture, you see Madonna and you see Prince, and there's kind of these gender bending roles. So you see Madonna dressing in a man's suit with like a woman that she's dominating over, and you're kind of like, what is this? And you see Prince kind of dressing more effeminate and expressing these effeminate aspects. And he's super popular. You also see these bands like Motley Crue come out, and they've got eyeliner on, they've got makeup on, they've got long poofed out hair. They kind of look like androgynous. So it's like blurring the lines of what is sexuality now? Is this man looks like a woman, and he's all shiny and whatever that is. And
this is also the rise of MTV at this point in time as well. And
yes.
So people are now they're not just buying a record, right? They're actually able to turn their TV on and be able to watch for really the first time these very sexualized music videos that they're making as well. So this was
a great point.
Big change at that point in time too.
And you start seeing a lot of like anti-Christian stuff now. What people would have had you believe when you were a kid, burn your CDs and all this, because if you play it backwards, it's the devil speaking. I don't think you had to do that. I think there were plenty of artists at the time that were putting out anti-Christian imagery. They'd put it in you'd get your album, and the album artwork, you'd see anti-Christ images on it. And they did it, I don't think because they were worshiping Satan per se, but they're doing it because it was like this counterculture thing. And it was like, this is how I rebel is
shock value.
Shock value. That's exactly right. It was just image. I don't necessarily think they were believing it. And we also see in the 80s, we see some of the introduction to some of the hip hop. So you see like Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and they represented like, this is kind of what's neat. And this is where I think we find ourselves. This is the early genesis of where we find ourselves today. So who's Grandmaster Flash speaking to? He's speaking to this life of systemic struggle and poverty, and you see Run DMC. So they're kind of bridging the gap between what was always popular was rock. And you see this new thing come on, and they went together and they work with Aerosmith, Walk This Way. And it like opened the whole door for hip hop to become mainstream. That was the first time I ever seen anything like that myself. You got Public Enemy, and they were politically charged, and they were anti-establishment. So you see them coming in. Again, this is just a new style of that counterculturalism. And and I'm not saying anybody that did this music, was malicious. I want to put that point, and I mean that throughout this entire thing. And it's more to what you're saying, which is it seems to be this overall agenda that's being played out as we see it happen. I think it's kind of the natural sin of man that takes us always furthers the degradation of us as we don't submit ourselves to Christ. That's what I'm always trying to say. So I'm not trying to push and say these guys are bad. 1988, we see NWA come on the scene with an album called Straight Outta Compton. And in that, it actually glorifies gang life. So we see them speaking to the people that have been experiencing systematic struggle, and they're saying, here's your outlet. You can defy authority. Like, screw these people trying to tell you what
the police, right?
Right. Screw these people trying to tell you what to do. You do you, whatever that means. Whether you got to take from somebody, you take from somebody because we didn't have it. So you see it actually not just, you see people like engaging with this. As we move into the 90s, we see Tupac. And he was huge. I cannot understate to anybody that didn't grow up in our era that's listening how big and cool and influential Tupac was.
And Biggie at the same time.
And you have Notorious B.I.G. And, Tupac's bringing in like this, he had it tattooed on his stomach, this thug life mentality.
Right.
And that encompassed all of it. It encompassed the gang life. It encompassed growing up impoverished. It encompassed like fame and drug life and drinking life and partying and women. And yeah, then we see Notorious B.I.G., who was more flashy. His was very fame driven and big money driven and driving these fancy cars. And you've seen that with Tupac, but you've seen it even more with Biggie. And then you see Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. They're coming in this G-Funk era. You remember it?
For sure, I remember it, man.
And they, above everybody, really pushed the drug culture.
I mean, one of Dr. Dre's biggest albums was The Chronic, right? I mean, and when that came out in the 90s, that was a new sound of music.
Yes.
That, I mean, everybody wanted to listen to at that point. It didn't matter black, white, brown, where you came from. It was
everywhere you went.
Yep.
And, we see a group like, and I love these guys, Wu-Tang Clan. They actually use a lot of mysticism in their lyrics. So as you listen to Wu-Tang Clan, you hear like street culture and then raps like dominance over things. And you see like each one of these guys played a part in the gestation of like what has become now this greater, I think rap is probably one of the most influential musics in culture right now. Yeah. You can argue pop too, for sure. But I would say like where we're at today, rap is probably one of the largest influences of culture that we have.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I don't want to take us off this path, but you can even see it with like TV. You go back to the 1980s and you had shows like The Cosby Show and Full House and Family Ties. And then you move into the 90s and we start seeing shows like Ellen and Will and Grace that were super edgy because it was going from the core family to now accepting homosexuality as a cultural norm. Like, hey, this is what a family can look like as well. And then you fast forward into shows now. We were talking about even seeing commercials now where it's just single moms, and it's just like there's just been this degradation even within TV over time that's been a slow go at it.
Absolutely.
But it's what it has done is has just normalized these anti-family, really anti-church or anti-family values. And people are looking at that. And if you grew up in a house then without family values, then you're going to look elsewhere for it because it wasn't emulated to you. And so that's
and as we see the rise in women that are single mothers, as we see men not sticking around and raising their kids, again, it almost feels intentional, but where there's a void, something's going to come in and fill that void. And it's these people that are singing these songs and that are doing this music, they come from these broken homes frequently, if not exclusively. And they speak about that, and it reaches the youth, and they go, I relate to that.
That's it.
And they want to mimic that, of course, because that's what children do. They're little mimic machines.
That's it.
So we see them being pulled by this. And what all does music influence? It influences fashion. It influences the way that we speak, the words that we use.
The slang that we use.
That's exactly right. It influences morality. It influences, I'd argue, your entire worldview.
Well, yeah. Because
what do you see happening in the world? What do I think of the world that I live in? What do I think of the people around me? And I really think that music plays, certainly in my life, it plays such a huge role in shaping how I see things and think about things.
Yeah. And when I think through like the music of the 90s, especially in the Christian, because that's where I grew up at, they never met that culture where they were at with the style of music. It was like Christian music said, hey, this is what Christian music is going to sound like. And this is where we're staying in, and they have to meet us here. And consequently, you had a whole generation of people that were like, your music's terrible. It doesn't speak to me at all. You all sing the same, basically you're singing the same thing over and over and again with really terrible beats. And so Christian music just never ever met people where they were at. And so consequently, if you couldn't relate to it, then people are going to go with what they relate with, and they're going to be relating with growing up maybe in a broken home or growing up with, maybe you did have a mom and a dad were there, but maybe your mom and dad worked all the time and they weren't there instilling in you core values or how to be a moral person or how to be a person within the community.
I seen a bunch of kids growing up when I was a kid whose parents, the minute the kid got out of the house, they divorced. Like I seen a bunch of that. That was so common. So it's like, they thought, we'll stay together till the kid's gone and then we can finally get this divorce thing out of the way. And it's like that kid lived in a house where their kids are little sponges and they're feeling that energy of mom and dad not actually being a unified force. They're feeling that break between mom and dad. So they're staying together and then they just get divorced. And I think it made those kids that grew up in that time think that marriage was for one purpose only, and that's to raise the kids. And then after that, it's disposable. Mm-hmm. And I mean, again, you're then left with this, a void of, well, what is marriage? Or what is it to even have a woman in my life?
Yeah.
And then if mom and dad weren't a good example, you start looking around for other stuff. And that's where those, again, boom, society and culture, which we think is heavily influenced by music, comes in and tells you this is what it is.
We're ready and waiting.
Pimps and hoes.
Right? Well, and then here's this big shift that happened. Even in through the 90s, there was still a limitation of accessibility because if you wanted that music, you had to go spend your money to buy that music. And
sure.
If you didn't have any money, then...
Great point.
Or if you didn't have cable TV, you couldn't watch MTV. So there was still a limitation at that time. Once we got into the 2000s with the internet, then you start seeing MP3 players. We start music streaming.
Yeah.
Remember Napster? You had Napster.
Yeah.
I mean, you could steal every song that you ever wanted to sing.
Sure could.
And so now the accessibility for music has changed in the early 2000s, which I think just took that culture shift and it quickened it just because everybody had access to it now, right? And so now it's being glorified too, by the way. Now it's like, hey, this is the standard of culture. If you want to be hard and you want to be, a person that's a threat, then this is the way you need to think, act, and talk. And we just lost out on what it meant to actually treat another person as a human being. How do we treat women? Like sexual immorality became normalized. Like you should have lots of partners. Mm-hmm. Why would you ever just want to be with one woman? It's
pimps up, hoes down, right? And either you're a pimp or you're a hoe. Really.
One of the two. Yeah, the women were being spoken messages too within that. Like, this is how you should expect to be treated.
I only pretend to know a man's mind as well as I know my own, which is not even that well, and I don't know women's mind hardly at all. And I know that as a young man, I was listening to hip-hop. So I want to say I still have a great heart for hip-hop. I really do. And I know we're going to focus a lot on that because we think it today currently has such a heavy influence. Mm-hmm. But in my youth, it had a heavy influence. If you were to go and ask any of my friends in high school, they'd say I listened to a lot of it. I loved Outkast. That album, Southern Playalistic Cadillac Funky Music, that never left my tape deck. It just played and it would play A-side, B-side, A-side, B-side all the time. I loved that album. So I have a heart for hip hop. But like, if I'm to just boil it down to what hip hop that's popular currently, the messages of it, it's frequently prostitution and sexual exploitation, murder and violence, hedonism and materialism. I mean, what other context are you finding in it? Mm. Yes, there's storytelling, but that's what the stories are about. And they would say, well, that's what we're experiencing. I can't disagree with that. Like, we're seeing the people who frequently are now superstars, they're putting out that same kind of music because that's what they grew up in. And now when they become famous, they probably move out of that. Who wouldn't? But like, the next group of people step into those places and then they're living that out because that's what they're being influenced by. And it's cyclical like that.
Maybe they're not actually even experiencing that at home. Maybe that's just the expectation is that this is how it's supposed to look. Remember the movie 8 Mile?
Of course.
The very end, the very last battle Eminem has with that guy, he's like, one of his lines is, and Clarence's parents have a real good marriage.
Yeah.
Clarence goes to private school.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, the guy had nothing to say because it was...
That was all true.
I'm a fake. I'm an imposter. I have a really good life at home, but I just want to put it out there like I don't, so that I can have street cred.
There you go.
Right, and so we see a lot of people out there that they're just what they're searching for is identity.
That's absolutely it.
Right. And then I want to find a community of people, and I'm an outcast in the community of people that I have over here. So I'm going to surround myself with some people over here in order for me to fit in. I'm just going to go ahead and look like they do and talk like they do and act like they do in hopes that I find a community of people over here.
And we have such a high prevalence of single mother homes. So these boys don't have a father around to guide them on their daily decisions on what it is to be a man.
And this is, just to be clear, the fatherless home thing. This is all communities. It's not just a black thing. It's not a Spanish thing.
Of course
it's
not.
All communities.
You look at the numbers, and it's all communities are seeing higher numbers year in and year out, decade by decade.
85% of children and teens with behavioral disorders right now, fatherless homes. 70% of adolescents in drug and alcohol treatment, fatherless homes. The percentage of kids in fatherless homes has tripled since the 1960s.
And Andy would say this if I didn't. This is not to crap on single mothers.
At all.
It's hard to be a two-parent household and raise a child or multiple children. So if you're a single lady out there, what we're trying to hopefully reflect is that you do need help. It would be better to have help. And we're saying, men, step up. If you've had kids, take the responsibility to raise those kids. Now, maybe you and mom didn't work out. You should still be showing up all the time.
All the time.
You should still be there for the kids, everything. You should take joint custody. You should attempt to, at least. And then you should fight for every scrap of moments you get with those kids. And they're going to remember that. And if you're not there, they're really going to remember that.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting to kind of pull us into some biblical examples of this. So, you know, we see lots of times in Scripture where the culture starts to shift and we see the degradation, and we see it very early on in the Bible. You go to Genesis 6:5. This is the time of Noah, and the verse said that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. And so what did God do? He destroyed the world with a flood, right? Because every part of the heart was always wicked. It just didn't happen overnight. It's a slow degrading.
Right.
You jump to Genesis 10, we see Sodom and Gomorrah. Because of their extreme wickedness, God brought judgment on them. In Deuteronomy, we see God command the Israelites to take out the Canaanites. And this is a challenging text for people because people look at that and go, you know, God is just this sick, sadistic God who wants to wipe out all people because of what God commanded them to do with the Canaanites. But what people aren't looking at was actually happening was that child sacrifice was a normal part of their community.
Yeah.
And God gave them hundreds of years to turn from their wickedness. And
many prophets speaking, this is the wrong way in advance.
Turn and go a different way, or God will bring judgment upon you.
That's right.
It wasn't just like they did something.
And we also see examples of God when he puts that out there and he says, if you continue down this path, it will end badly for you. We see him receding his anger multiple times in the Bible and not punishing the people that do repent. We see that with the story of Jonah
and
when he shows up in the Ninevites.
Which is why Jonah didn't want to go.
That's why Jonah didn't want to go. Look into that story.
Great example.
Yeah. You see God stepping in and being like, hey, if you continue to do this, you will be punished for this.
Yes.
Because God is a God of justice.
Yes.
Right? So, but you see his compassion and his patience because it takes a long time before he actually moves his hand. And when he does, it's because it's gotten that bad. Mm-hmm. And we see that in our own lives, you know, as we reflect on who we are, you know, God gave me a long time and a lot of messengers in advance to me when I was in my drinking. You know, there were a lot of people around me going, hey man, I'm worried about you. Are you okay? Is everything okay? Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm good. You know, all along my path. And because I'm stubborn, I'm hard-headed, like God talks about in the Bible constantly, you know, finally when he had to put his judgment down, it was very painful. It was painful for a good long time then because it took a long time to get to that level of pain.
Yeah. Jeremiah is a great example of this too. Jeremiah was a prophet, and the book of Jeremiah probably had the hardest of all of them because it was like he had his whole life of just hard with people and people not turning and repenting.
Yeah.
Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So we have to understand from the God's perspective of things, understanding that my heart is evil. Mm-hmm. My heart is broken. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not what we're saying in this is that if I'm not daily filling in my life with Christ, I can be swayed by culture as well. Very easy. I mean, we've talked about this in here before. We did another series on music. Just if I'm not in a good position with my walk with Christ and I'm driving down the road listening to some song that just stirs my brain to start thinking differently, then yeah, it's very easy for me to move away from it. If that's all I'm putting into my life is music and culture and what's happening out there, of course I'm going to look like that. That's normalized. That's why we are saying is it's our responsibility to step in, number one, for ourselves and stay closely knit with Christ. But if we see other people out there, we see some young men that are out there that don't have a godly example leading them, step in.
I also think an important thing to say is when you're successful, if you're not looking back towards God and giving him the glory in that success,
good point, man.
How quickly I do this. So this is me. Things are going good, and I'm going to throw on some Jay-Z Dust Off My Shoulder, because I start feeling like I'm all up in my stuff, and I feel pretty good, and I'm pretty good, and look how great all these things are, and I'm not giving that back to God. And God's pretty quick these days to go, well, I'll shut that valve off, doop, and it's over. So I got a passage here I want to read, to Colossians 3:16. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. What's that mean? God calls us to music that teaches wisdom and lifts up gratitude, not music that normalizes rebellion. It's like when I'm having successes, praise God. When things suck, God, I need you. Praise God that you're there, And it's like if you're always centering your life around who God is and what his greater plan is, the successes don't have to be so high and then right back down to so low, and the lows are never as low as they used to be.
No.
He meets you in all your places when you're constantly focused on him. And I think that it's when we're just listening to secular music, and especially, the current form of what is secular music, you don't hear God in that at all. And you don't hear gratitude in that at all. You hear self-glorification.
You do.
And you hear, what would sound like happiness and fulfillment. But if you listen closely, what you hear is like drug abuse, sexual abuse, relational abuse. If you just read the lyrics of whatever the top 10 songs this week and tell me what you find.
In trouble with the law, like that's a normalized thing.
Oh, there you go.
There was a song in the 90s that came out by DMX, who I love DMX. My favorite song by DMX is Slippin'. This is one of the most poetic songs, but he has this thing, and he says, I'm just going to read the lyrics because he says, going too fast, it wouldn't last, but I couldn't tell. Group homes and institutions prepared me for jail. They put me in a situation forcing me to be a man when I was just learning to stand without a helping hand. And he says, was it my fault? Was it something that I did to make a father leave his first kid at 7 doing my first bid? And then he goes on to say, back on the scene at 14. I mean, you just hear this story about him just trying to figure out why he says it in here. He's like, was it my fault? Was it something that I did? And then all he has to look to is what's going on in the street.
Right.
And
that's the only men around.
It's the only men around. And so I feel for people that live in communities where this is what the normal day of life is, where they feel like there isn't an out, where they feel like, I have no hope.
No power.
There's the only way.
Maybe not even hope. Maybe it's power. And then you listen to something and they sound like they've captured power, like they somehow have power. Yeah. And that's seductive.
Yeah. Tupac had that song, Dear Mama, right? And it was just this song about his mom because his
the struggles she went through.
She went through it because his dad was a coward. He wasn't there. He said he passed away and I didn't cry because my anger wouldn't let me feel for a stranger. And just how often we hear that story from people of just their expectations and their desire that they would have loved. They would have traded it to have somebody in their life that would have walked with them and showed them a better way. But, it's like you said, and I'm so glad you said it, to our single moms, shout out to you. it was never your job. It's never your responsibility to teach a boy how to be a man.
Yeah.
It's not that you're gifted. It's just it was never your role to teach a boy how to be a man. There is something significant to a boy watching a father work, provide, lead.
Yeah.
And I think the most important.
And if the father's not going to be there doing it, somebody else will be. And if it's not a man who is biblically principled, the culture is going to fill in. And we see where culture is at. I don't think it's coincidental that we see so many kids confused on what their gender even is these days. Mm-hmm. You know? That's such a prevalent thing now. It's unbelievable.
I think what that is, I think that goes back to kind of a statement I made a little bit ago. I think it comes back to them feeling like they don't have a community. And so because they so desire a community, I'm just going to say I'm this thing.
That's great too.
Or just this way, because those are the most accepting people. You can say whatever you want to about them, but the most accepting community that it's out there, they accept you for who you are and how you are. They don't push back on it. Right or wrong.
I don't know that I agree with the statement. I think that it would appear that it's the most accepting community, but the minute you turn away from that community, you're hated.
They'll tear you apart.
So it's like, if I'm confused and I'm going to them for support, in my confusion, yes, there's a welcoming hand.
Yeah.
But if I do stabilize and find out that I'm not what I thought I was, we've seen
they eat their own.
They blacklist.
They eat their own.
Yeah. So
but it's always.
I think it's a front.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things a father needs to do for his son is teach him how to love.
How does he do that?
I'm proud of you. Mm-hmm. I mean, just those words from a father to a son is "I'm proud of you" are worth their weight in gold.
I think just showing up.
Yeah.
Showing up.
Being present.
Yep.
Just being present. I mean, hear these stories of like just kids just desiring for a father to show up and in expectation of them being there and then don't, and just the crushing nature that comes with that. And so, dads, if you're listening right now, and I'm speaking to myself too, that I know it's very easy for us to get busy. And what we tell ourselves is that I have to be busy because I'm providing and you are, and nobody's going to feed these kids. It's my job. Yes, all those things are true. But the number one thing kids want is time. That's it.
Yeah.
They want your time and they want your attention. And so if I can share anything with the young dads that are listening to this that I did poorly as a young dad, is just spend time with them, man. Just love on them. If you don't lead them, somebody else will.
Yeah.
If you don't give them a vision, somebody else will. If you don't give them a voice, somebody else will. And so we have the necessity now more than ever, if we want to see culture shift, and we believe that there's a revival coming for this. Yep. We're seeing the numbers are showing it.
Yep.
Young people going back to church again, but we have to be the ones that control the narrative. Our narrative can't be this. It can't be, don't listen to this stuff, that music's bad.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't work. What it has to be is controlling the narrative, is that when you hear these things, you just need to be able to push back and go, that's not the right way, that there's a better path forward, that these people their songs are singing, the poetry that they're writing is out of life experience that they're trying to share with you, of the brokenness that they have. Now, they glamorize it because they're trying to cover up the insecurities that they truly feel.
Again, I think it's a highlight reel. It's not the truth of what's actually happening in their life. I bet it's significantly more complex than that.
For sure. I mean,
we talk about a lot of these artists are massively in debt. They're not as rich as you would believe them to be as they show on the videos or on their social media pages. Some of them have become wildly wealthy. There's no question about that.
But I would say that's a very, very, very small number of them.
And, what is the Bible says that, what is it worth if it takes your soul or something to that effect? And it's like, what's all the money in the world for if at the end of the day you can't be proud?
You forfeit your soul.
Yeah. If you can't just be proud of who you are and be setting up a legacy for your kids and for the people around you that you influence, for your sphere of influence.
We talked about Elvis earlier. We were talking before we hit record, but you would take a guy like that who is at the peak.
When he's a young guy, he's a young Christian artist.
Yeah.
He's singing gospel songs.
That's where he gets his start. And then he finds some fame and notoriety, and he surrounded himself with people that just wanted to prop him up so they could make money off of him.
Yeah.
And he bought into it. He lived a very glamorous life. And then what happened? He died sitting on a toilet of drugs.
That's
alone.
All alone.
The whole world would look at Elvis and say, he's made it. He has it all. He had it all. He had the houses and the money, and it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough. He cheated on his wife and, was a heavy drug addict and overweight. And just everything that came with the pressure of him trying to live up to the standard that he was never designed for. But that's the problem. I think that's a devil's tactic, is he wants to prop up the things in the materialism of this world. So you see that and go, that looks good.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, the number of people today, the highest rate of suicide is among wealthy white people. And it's like, okay, well, if that's one of the highest suicide rates, then maybe there's something false there. Maybe there's a wrong narrative that's been painted about what that peak looks like.
Yeah, that's a great point. Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun, meaning this has happened before. This is not the first time.
Oh, it's so good.
The world is cyclical. Time is cyclical. They say it doesn't repeat, it rhymes. That's what they say about history frequently. And I think it's true. We look back towards Rome and Greece and we see these things. We see, the murder stuff I'm talking about. We see gladiator games and we watch a movie on that. We go, man, it's cool. But think about being in a gladiatory arena. You're a gladiator. First off, you're a slave. You're not a free person. And then you have to go out and fight to the death. And most times they were just throwing you in there for the satisfaction of watching you die. It wasn't to see you win. It was to see you die.
Well, then everybody would show up to watch them die. That was a normal part of Roman culture.
And what are the most popular videos on TV now or on social media right now? It's like watching people get into car accidents, watching people get run over, watching people get killed. Yeah, that's why these kids do it. These kids will film themselves committing crimes for the street cred, but also for the views, because it is off the chain how many people will watch this crap. You also see, in the theater of the time, to sort of reflect your movie thing, you see a lot of sexuality in the theater there. These were frequently naked people on stage. People are watching that. So you have a sexual immorality happening there. Prostitution's in the open.
Yep.
Prostitution everywhere.
Normal.
By the way, we see more of that now too. We see it in different forms though. See, back in the day, you'd go sleep with a prostitute. Now you just pay somebody money to watch them do crap on TV, on your phone. Mm-hmm. That's the same. There's no difference here. By the way, if you think that there's a difference, go ask your wife or your girlfriend what she thinks. Yeah. Honey, I'm not sleeping with anybody. I'm just paying this lady on TV to take her top off. I'm sure she'll be plenty happy to hear that.
Super, super happy. It'll make her feel great.
I hear so many dudes justify that. We'll see it in the comment thread too, where people will go you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Sure. Think that.
Where's your marriage?
The marriage you don't have.
Right.
And ask your wife. Because we see plenty of women that then write in and say, I'm so glad a man finally said that. Mm-hmm. Because my husband, this and that. We've seen endless comments on that thread.
Yeah.
Where these women are hurt and broken not because their man went out and found a woman, but because he allowed himself to indulge that because he thought that was somehow going to be some fulfillment for him. And again, I argue that comes from the culture, and I think the music influences the culture to bring that piece back in.
And not even just that, reality TV has exposed that at a higher rate. We look at shows like the Kardashians, this is somehow supposed to be what a family unit looks like or what success looks like. And then all the dating things that you see on there. It's just reality TV is what's happening out there today. And it's we live in this voyeuristic society where it's I just want to watch from the outside as these people's lives just implode. And we start to root for it too. We start to root for people to fail. And just because we see them going, well, they look like they got their stuff all together, so I can't wait till, something bad happens to them. And it's no different than what was happening, in the Colosseum 3,000 years ago with the gladiators. We're still doing the same thing. So culture doesn't change. It just rhymes. I really like that. But, as we start to think about the music of today, even going from what we grew up on to the music of today, it's I always wonder how many of the people that are out there on social media that are rappers that rap about this lifestyle that just go home to a normal house and they don't live in the hood and they don't they're not under starvation, that are not on food stamps, that they're actually just they're posers is what they are. And so, you always have to wonder when you're watching social media, is this thing that I'm watching, is that really what's happening in that person's life? And
it's a scam.
I agree.
It's a scam. And you're being scammed, ultimately. And I'm not saying you can't listen to this stuff. You're going to do you. We're just here trying to put a caution sign up and saying, hey, maybe think about it. Just consider when you're listening to the next message, is it affecting my behavior? Am I listening to things? Am I taking in a constant stream of things that don't glorify the people around me and won't lead to glory in my life, won't lead to happiness in my life, that actually only make me feel like I'm less than? Because frankly, that's going to be the case often too, is you're going to watch these guys on TV showing you, again, that highlight reel of their life where you go like, man, everything's perfect there. And my stuff sucks.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why we also see such a high prevalence of depression in young men and women now, especially women.
Yes, more than ever before.
These numbers are more than we've ever charted in human history, because we've just lost these ties to our actual community. We live in this, like, that's another piece of it, isn't it? Is like, my community used to be the little town I lived in. Yes, I could watch MTV or I could watch TV, but for the most part, my day-to-day interactions were beset by the people around me. I'd watch the guy down the street or the people in my direct face-to-face community. They were the people around me that either inspired or disparaged.
Yeah.
But now it's like we live on these phones, and this person could be in a different state or a different country, and nothing about their life is anywhere inside of my life. But then somehow I'm envying it, and I'm chasing after that dream. But I live here in this reality, and it's always going to be unfulfilling and disconnected. And then you wonder why you disassociate with everyone around you.
That's huge, man.
Because you're like, man, you guys suck compared to this stuff that I'm following.
And AI is only going to make it worse,
Well,
right?
there's that too, gosh.
There's this verse, 1 John, it's 3 verses, 1 John 2, 5, or 15 to 17. Again, 1 John 2, 15 to 17. Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires will pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. This is a reminder to us, these three things in here: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. When we look at culture today, these are the three major categories of sin.
Those are the pillars
that they look at. This was written 2,000 years ago.
There you go, once again.
And John, when he's writing this letter, he's saying, listen, for everything in the world, and these are the three things you need to be watch out for. And it's amazing how 2,000 years later that those three things still resonate today. As you just said, they're the pillars of what culture is saying today. You need to lust of the flesh. You want a bunch of hot women around you. You want to have sex with as many people as you can.
And do that.
Yeah,
Go
it's
out and
okay.
do that. It's great.
Lust
the more you do it, the more awesome you are.
Yeah,
and the more you'll be rewarded with even more.
You have a higher body count. Lust of the eyes. All the stuff that you need. Materialism.
Yeah.
I got to have the house, the car, and all the money. And then the pride of life. Look how awesome I am.
Because I've accumulated these things, aren't I the very best?
I
win the game.
You should listen to me.
I'm an authority on all things.
Yeah. You should follow me and subscribe to me and like me. And then just everything I do, you should do, because
I'm the best.
I've figured it out.
Yeah.
What do you think is happening in the shift with music today? How do you see hip-hop changing today as we see the rise of some of these Christian hip-hop stars coming on that are making incredible music, but are doing it in a way that is reaching this culture that has been deceived for so many decades?
Well, I think, and again, we're focusing on hip-hop, and let me just go ahead and give you a teaser. We've got an amazing young man who is in the hip-hop realm. He's also a Christian guy, and he's making dynamic, phenomenal music. I'm not going to tell you his name yet, because we're gonna tell you that here maybe in the next episode as we tease it. But we're kind of focused on that piece because I think if we got too broad in all the styles of music, it would get lost. And we do actually believe that hip-hop is such a heavy driver right now. It's either hip-hop or pop. And we chose the hip-hop angle because we've got this amazing guest.
And because we resonate with hip hop,
and we grew up with it. We grew up with it. So take it as you will. I think God predicts all these things. So in Romans 1:21 through 22, he says, "For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools. Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another." See, that's the point is that if you want to chase this, God will give you a heap and helping of it. And I think we are receiving our heap and helping right now. I think that as we've all chased after it, and we've done it in our lives, right? Mm-hmm. I have allowed the things of culture
for the majority of my life.
I've allowed it to affect who I thought I was.
Yeah.
I allowed it to be my identity, and it led me to bad places. And because I kept chasing it, even when there were so many warning signs around me and so many people coming up and saying, "Hey, man, you're kind of out of control." And I just, "Get out of my way. How dare you? I'm chasing after my thing." And I think as a culture, we've done that. Mm-hmm. And I think like we said, it started in the 50s as we pushed back against the valid argument that there was a lot of hypocrisy in the church.
Yeah.
But I think the hope now is that we see Generation Z choosing something else because things have gotten to be so ugly, as it says here, when God gave them over to their sinful desires. We just see how bad the outcome is.
Yeah.
You know, the truth is in a long enough timeline, we are seeing the faults in a lot of these celebrities. And you see them long enough and you go like, what happened to DMX? Boy, died pretty young, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Tupac, dead. Biggie, dead. A lot of these guys just died. Chris Cornell, Chester Bennington. These guys that like you thought had it all. And the lifestyle that they put around them ultimately led to their untimely deaths in one form or another.
We saw it in the 60s with Jimi Hendrix, and you already said them earlier, and
right.
Jim Morrison. I mean, you saw these people that were at the peak of their music careers. And
so God has given us over to our sinful desires, and we see what the outcome of that is. And I think God is now speaking into the hearts of the youth. And I think guys like our guy who we're going to bring on, and some of these other artists like, we've brought him up a bunch of times, Brandon Lake, as like, they're getting these opportunities that you never would have imagined in the past to be able to speak to large groups of people and to be able to shift culture. And we're seeing culture start to catch, I don't even want to steal his wisdom, our guy. But like, Christianity was never meant to follow. It was always meant to lead, and that's where I see, guys like our pastor is stepping in. He's really challenging men.
Pastor Mike.
Shout out. He's really challenging men to step into their role, and he's biblically oriented, so it's manly, because that's what the Bible speaks of as actual strong men that have vulnerable moments where they learn the lessons they needed to learn, and then they step up. Mm-hmm. So like that's where Mike's coming from, and it challenges us as men to really, it makes our role cool. It makes my role as a husband and as a father and as a business owner something to like, when I'm bringing God into it, to really be proud of. I'm proud because God gave me this opportunity.
Yeah.
And then I glorify him for it. I say, God, thank you so much for all the ways you've blessed me. And as we continue to do that, you and I as men, we see it starting to become reality for them below us, and because we're not doing it from a place of hypocrisy. See, we've been out there, and we've done all these stupid things, and it led to misery, and it led to pain. And on this side of it, we're now from I lived this aspect. I lived this. We're on the other side going, with God, it's better.
It is, man.
And these kids are listening to us because they hear the truth.
That's it. Because if
Christ is the truth.
If that life was so glamorous, if it was so worth having,
yeah.
Why are they all addicted to drugs and alcohol? Like,
why is it so prevalent there? It's so great.
If it's so awesome, why are they killing themselves? Why are they dying young? Why are they being murdered? Like, if it's so amazing. But the Bible also says that the gospel is foolishness to those that are perishing.
There it is.
Right? And so if you don't have Jesus, then you look at the truth in the words of the Bible as foolishness. And so This is why, men, it's never too late to start.
Yep.
As we kind of bring this thing into a closing here, it's never too late for you to start. If you have been on the other side of this as we have, or you've chased the things of this world and you're unhappy, you're empty, and you're looking for something better, this is an opportunity if you make a stance in your life and give your life to Jesus and start doing things differently. And over time, you can begin to rebuild relationships. It's not going to be about what you say to people. It's going to be about what you do and the actions of your life that are going to prove to people that you're different.
I love that.
You need to surround yourself with some other men and women. You need to surround yourselves with those other women who are ahead of you, who have been down this path before, who can point you to Christ. And I promise you, it's not going to be easy. If any Christian tells you the life of a follower of Christ is easy, they're lying to you and run from them. The life of a follower of Christ is hard because I have to be willing to sacrifice the things that I find pleasure in this life. Not that I'm not joyful, not that I'm happy, not that we don't have fun. It's just the broken, sinful part of me that desires these things of this world. I have to be able to say no.
Yep.
And that's hard sometimes. But on the other side of it, because of that struggle, I got to have peace that surpasses all understanding. I'm peaceful in times when I shouldn't be. That is the message and the hope of the gospel that we want you to find.
Yeah. So some practical applications. Study the scripture. Do you know Jesus? If you don't, get in the book. Find a Bible. Get a Bible. There's Bibles online. You can read it for free. It costs nothing. But get yourself a Bible. We always suggest you start in the New Testament. Why? Because then you can meet Jesus right away. He's the best. You go back to the Old Testament later on, you'll find out all this prophecy about who they predicted Jesus to be. It's cool. It's a great story back there. But we always suggest you start in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. My favorite, always my favorite, is the book of James. That was Jesus' brother who didn't believe in Jesus until Jesus was resurrected. So his whole life, he's like, oh my gosh, my older brother, bro, please. I know
you're the Messiah.
You're so great. I know we all fall short of your glory. And then he's murdered. And by God's beautiful grace, he resurrects him. And James is forever changed. And he goes on he's
the bishop of Jerusalem.
Tear.
He's the first pastor in Jerusalem after that. And his
words speak to a man's heart. They speak to this man's heart.
They speak to this
So
man's
study
heart.
the scripture. Engage with your family. If you have brokenness in your home, it's not too late to restore that. God restores all things. So if you have been an absent father, today's the day you can change that. Do it. What does that mean? Show up. Be intentional about the time you spend with your family. Be intentional to your wife. Be intentional towards your kids. Show interest. Develop interest. It might not come right away. They might be small and you go like, I don't have any good conversations with them. Just be there. Put your big face right next to their little face.
Skin to skin.
There you go. A step you can take is to limit the media that you're consuming.
Great point.
So you don't have to watch every show that comes on TV that everybody tells you to watch. You can start trying to filter through some of that stuff and see, is this right for me and my household? Is this going to enrich me? Is this going to, and it doesn't only mean that. Like, listen, I like to go watch an action movie. John Wick movies are some of my favorite movies. Does that enrich me? Not really. Though I do get inspired to go shoot some more guns. I love doing that.
I love doing that. Forgot how much I love doing that.
But like, what music are you consuming? Does it make you feel once you're done listening to it like, your potential is great? Or does it make you feel like you're not living up to some other hypothetical version of what the world says you should be? And finally, choose wise companions.
Oh, it's so important, man. Golly, man. Just talking
Who you hanging with?
Just talking to my wife's brother yesterday about this. And, he's come out of a hard life. And we talked yesterday and he said to me, yep, I just had to find some new friends. And I'm like, man, that's it, man. It's all about who you're around, who you're with. You are a sum total of the people you spend the most time with.
What a great answer. Shout out to Rick.
Yeah.
Brilliant statement. So, guys, from Elvis to Drake, has music simply reflected culture, or has it become one of the driving forces pulling us away from Christian values? Music didn't create the decline, but it has amplified it, with hip-hop now leading the charge in shaping our identities, morals, and worldview. That's my statement. The real question for us now is, do we let culture keep discipling us, or do we start reclaiming our own microphones?
Let's go.
Only you can decide what you're consuming and how it's affecting you? Are you letting the cultural stuff around you, the TV, the music, maybe bad people, influence who you are and who you could be and who you should be? We say try Jesus. Step into that place, ask him to step into your life and start making the changes that need to be made.
That's it.
Yeah.
If you know more musical lyrics than you do the words of the Bible, maybe think about what you're consuming. What you put in is what's going to come out.
Isn't that it? Yeah. All right, guys. We are UPD, Johnny Hansen, Andy Lamb, and we just want to pray that you have a deep and a fulfilling relationship with Jesus and that he blesses you all the days of your life.
And all God's people said.
They said amen.
Sure did.